If you're following the Great Push last season, you might have noticed that the team consisting of Kira, AJ, and Yargi were able to place second in last season's Great Push. An incredible feat. As you might also know about these players, they are excellent live and ladder players, and consistently they're at the top of the leaderboard, and recently they have been pushing up some of the highest keys in the world, and I think it's time to take a look at a couple of their runs. We're going to have one run today and one run tomorrow. In today's run, we're going to be looking at a Cinderbrew Meadery that was put up 12 hours ago, and it was under by 3.5 minutes. A truly impressive performance. Cinderbrew Meadery, it doesn't actually have a lot in terms of routing implications. There's only a couple of packs that you can realistically skip in these dungeons, but we're going to kind of talk about those packs as they come up and how you're going to be skipping them. I also think that with a little bit of tech and a lot of damage, this team was actually able to time this key fairly convincingly, and that's why they are so fast on this dungeon. So we're going to be looking at this through the lens of Yargi today, but we're also going to have AJ's and Kira's POV to kind of talk about some of the most important things later on in the dungeon. So, right off the bat, we have one of the hardest pulls in the dungeon. It's going to be double muscle and a bunch of these pyromaniacs. Realistically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put one melee interrupt per pyromaniac if possible. Then, in addition to that, you need to be popping every single defensive that's available and just trying to defensive through all these muscles. Your mage and your DK in this composition are going to be likely doing the majority of the damage to the muscle and trying to make sure that it's not getting too many barrels out on your players. You're going to be basically popping every single available defensive, such as Power Word Barrier and Darkness and AMZ. Like, basically everything's going to get pressed here because you're going to be taking an intermission pull. How the front area of this dungeon is done is it's basically broken up into 3 separate pulls. And then the first and the third pull are by far the hardest packs whenever you have a bunch of trash. Then you do Chef Chewy as that intermission pull that I called it, and you're basically trying to allow your offensive CDs to become available again for the next hard pull. And you also want a bunch of your defensives to come back up as well. So you're kind of waiting for Chef Chewy to die off. Chef Chewy's compliments to the Chef ability is actually very dangerous, making the mobs deal more damage. It used to have like CC reduction, but it no longer has that, and that's not a big deal. So the second or the third pull of this dungeon is done. You know, this team is going to be going into Brew Master Aldryr in just a couple of seconds. And you might notice on screen right here that they actually have 3 mobs off to the side that are yet to be pulled. These are going to get pulled into the boss in just a little bit, but they don't want it into the boss on pull. They're going to be, again, waiting for their offensive CDs to come back up. So it'll probably be coming in around the second intermission after the boss has been pushed into that 66% threshold. Once you do this, the plan is kind of simple for what high-end groups are going to be looking to do on this fight. So the tank, or the mage in this instance, is going to be on the right-hand side here, and they are going to be running this mug to this peon, and they're going to be running this mug to this peon that's all the way on the right. Then you have the other 3 remaining players, not including the healer, and they are going to be running the mugs this direction. The healer, in this case AJ, is going to be standing here, and he's going to be planted casting on the entire party while this AoE is going off from the happy hour. The healer, Disc Priest is not exactly the most mobile specialization. Sometimes you'll have Mage doing that, like we saw here. Hearthjax was running to that right side. Sometimes you use Vengeance Demon Hunter. It kind of just depends on what you want with your comp. For them, it made sense that Vengeance Demon Hunter was going to be on the other side with the trash pack, so that way Kira was going to be able to silent sigil this pack in and make sure that the trash kind of got in seamlessly. From then, he's going to be kicking the Pyromaniac in, and the Pyromaniac can actually put a debuff on players that needs to be dispelled off immediately. And you see AJ is doing a great job here of dispelling that off of players immediately. They're going to be kind of trying to just you're going to be prioritizing the boss. Realistically, Ignite and DK prio damage is going to be able to do enough to be able to get the pack killed off. If you need a little bit more funnel damage, it's totally fine to Starfall, but realistically, you would like to do as much boss damage as possible. So, now, they have made it through the first boss, and this is where we're going to have to kind of cut away to AJ's POV, and we're actually going to have to break away into MDT before we actually cut away to AJ's POV. So first and foremost, there are 2 buffs that are in this dungeon. The first buff is used by alchemists or cooking, and what it does is it throws a glob of honey at the location, splashing up to 8 players and creatures. So this can include friendly players as well, if it goes on friendly players. And it also reduces the mob's haste by 15%, which is the most important part here. The movement speed is reduced by 80% as well, which can be dangerous if it's thrown on allies, but mob haste kind of works in mysterious ways, kind of like we talked about whenever we were looking at the Motherlode the other day. But the sticky honey can go on some of these mobs, and reducing the amount of cast time that the taste testers and the scientists have is going to be kind of important. On top of that, we also have the Flame On ability, which is usable by engineers, mechanomes, gnomes, or goblins. And what this does is it will inflict damage in front of the target, inflicting 1% of their maximum health as fire damage every 1 second for 4 seconds, and disorienting them for 5 seconds. So AJ is going to be running off to the side and grabbing the sticky honey and the flame on ability. And we are going to see him immediately walking up and grabbing this flamethrower. We don't see him grabbing the sticky honey, but it doesn't really matter. So he's going to grab the flamethrower, and what is about to happen next is one of the coolest pieces of tech that you're going to see in all of Mythic Plus this season. So he's going to be grabbing that. He's going to dispel himself, and Kira is going to receive, and Kira and the rest of the team are going to receive 0 healing for the remainder of this clip here, because you're going to see AJ here starting to cast this flame on. And what you're then going to see is he's going to be spamming this extra action button with this flame on over and over and over and over again. And what I suspect is happening is that he's able to spell queue into the flame on cast happening every single GCD. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here, AJ is going off. He's doing 10 million DPS on this pull. So we also have a POV of it happening later on in the dungeon, and he's actually not able to get the flame on from the flamethrower for an extended period of time. I suspect it has to do with like the spell queuing of the ability, which is why he was able to spam it before and not necessarily able to spam it here. He only is able to get it pressed one time, but it still does a significant amount of damage and is going to speed up their key substantially whenever you're able to do that. So that's a huge deal, and that's a massive time save. And we can go back to Yargi's POV right here, where again, you're seeing AJ do 10 million damage on a trash pack, unprecedented amount of damage whenever you factor in that he's also PIing a target. Now, we are approaching the first skip of the dungeon, and the first skip of the dungeon is this Flavor Scientist double Hobgoblin pull. These Hobgoblins are the, I think, second least efficient mobs in this entire dungeon. The only mob that is less efficient is going to end up being Chef Chewy. On an efficiency rating perspective, you know, the Hobgoblins have slightly more efficiency than Chef Chewy, but Chef Chewy kind of has to be done. There's not really much you can realistically do. You can't really skip him. So high-end groups are looking to skip Hobgoblins if at all possible, and you see right here, they are going to be Vengeance Demon Hunting them, pulling them to the side, and then Kira is going to Infernal Strike ahead and then meld off the pack. This pack right here is Mind Soothe, so the remainder of the party is not going to be accidentally getting in combat. But they do want the pack itself, so they're going to be tagging it and pulling it into the pull. And I've actually never seen a pull done into the IPA boss room that is this large before. They are basically grabbing the patrol, they are grabbing the 4-pack in the corner, and they are grabbing every single mob in the cubby of the IPA room. What this allows them to do as well is save a little bit of time on the IPA boss spawning. If you end up killing off this trash first, you get the boss spawning a little bit faster. You don't have to wait as long on just the boss to spawn. So it's actually a pretty smart way that they're looking to deal with this. Then they are going to be grabbing one Hobgoblin that is in this room, and then a couple of the remaining trash packs. It looks like G25 and G29. They are then going to skip this G27 Hobgoblin and the G28 Taste Tester, allowing them to have a little bit less space in this room than most other teams elect to have. But they are, again, trying to pull as few Hobgoblins as possible because they're just not efficient mobs. They are some of the, again, like I said, they're the least efficient mobs in this dungeon realistically, and they're deadly while not being efficient. If they weren't deadly, it wouldn't be a big deal. But because they're so dangerous, you're going to see teams are going to be electing to skip them as often as possible. Now, we get the brew droplets from that Hobgoblin, and we are immediately going into IPA, and that's when we're going to cut to Kira's PV right here. The way that you tank this fight and the way that Kira tanks this boss is actually incredibly smart. So right off the bat, you see that they have a DK, which is nice. So the DK is able to A-bomb Limb and get these brew droplets grouped up. Kira also has an energy tracker that's underneath the boss's nameplate, and I think that this is super smart. Now, Kira, right before the AoE is going to be going off by IPA, is going to be positioning this boss in kind of an interesting manner. He's going to be getting the brew droplets to spawn in a way that he wants them to. And you can see right here, this is going to be the main pile of the brew droplets that are spawning. These are the previous brew droplets that were spawning. And so then he's going to be getting the Spouting Stout happening, and then he's going to pull the boss across the room because you can actually predict where these droplets are going to be spawning. So this one spawns here, the new droplet spawns here, and then there's one that's going to be spawning like right in front of where the boss is. It actually ends up spawning right here, but because the boss is facing this direction, but so it makes sense. So one of them is spawning here. Then Kira is going to be looking to get a Sigil of Chains on the main stack of the brew droplets here, and then do a drive-by on these brew droplets, allowing them to get a fat ignite from the Fire Mage. Whenever you're playing with the Fire Mage in this composition and you're playing at a high end, you know that you're gonna need to like value the ignite getting spread onto these mobs quite heavily, and you're gonna see this happening again from Kira the next time. So he's gonna be again moving IPA across the room and trying to get these brew droplets, one of them or two of them spawning in approximate location to the large stack of the brew droplets that are going to be reincarnating here in a second, and he's already pinging where he wants to be dragging this boss to. Then the DK and the Moonkin are going to help get the pack grouped up, and if there's a large ignite on the boss, again, from the combustion from the Fire Mage, kind of similar to what we saw from Yasma in Season 3 of Dragonflight, the boss is going to get dragged right across the mobs, spreading that fat ignite to the mobs, and then allowing the brew droplets to just kind of get obliterated via passive AoE. So a really smart way of kind of dealing with this, and I think that Kira does an absolutely excellent job of being able to kite this out. So you see even right there, he lets the mobs get just close enough to get into ignite range, and then he immediately jams down his Sigil of Chains, just not allowing those brew droplets to get so close, but they got close enough to where they were able to get the ignite spread off onto them, and then they just get evaporated basically by passive cleave. Okay, now let's move on to the Bink Busby room. So IPA is down. We're going to make sure we don't pull the Hobgoblin. We're going to make sure that we don't pull the trash pack whenever we're leaving this area. Not a big deal. Now we are into the Bink Busby room, and we basically need a lot of trash here. Because of the Hobgoblin pulls that we were skipping, we are going to need most of the count that's in this area. I think that teams at the very beginning of the season were maybe looking to press invisibility potions and kind of skip through a lot of this area. But realistically, there isn't a ton special that you can do in this area. The only thing that you realistically need to know is like how they're going to be coordinating their kicks. So for Purveyors, that typically requires a melee interrupt to be able to lock them out every single time. For the Wranglers, that requires a 20-second kick. So the Mage is an excellent kick on a Wrangler mob here. Then beyond that, you're just trying to make sure that you're not taking damage from the B Wranglers if possible. The Bazooka can be outranged at a 30-yard range, and so you see AJ here, he gets targeted with the Bazooka. He takes a couple steps back to make sure he's not going to get hit by that. The Harvester, whenever it does the volley cast, the big AoE, not the volley from the Purveyor, but the other volley, you're going to be taking just a decent amount of damage. So you just want to make sure that you're topped up after every single one of those casts and dodging out of the way of the Wrangler's Bazooka if possible. This area is largely on Kira's ability to be able to live. That's going to be the scariest part of this area. Just a lot of the trash mobs stack up. The Beelits end up stacking up the Bee Venom on him, and the Wranglers do a decent amount of damage. If the pack ever gets enraged, Kira is very likely to die. So we are 2 minutes off of our Bloodlust here. And Kira is, realistically, you could pull some of this trash into the boss if you wanted to, if your Lust was up on time or something like that. But they are too fast, which is a good problem to have. And so they don't have to play something that's this aggro, but they do anyways, where they take the 3-pack into the pack that is in the Bink Busby room. They, again, just need to make sure that they're getting kicks on the Purveyor, make sure that you have the DK is going to grip the Purveyor in and get the kick on that. Kira's going to be kicking the Purveyor that's in Purveyor 9 that you see on screen right here, and then Hearthjax is likely to be kicking this B Wrangler. From here on out, it's basically just on Kira's ability to be able to live, and then they're going to be onto Bink Busby. Bink Busby is kind of interesting. It's mostly a healer fight. So the healer, AJ in this case, is going to be getting on these vehicles and kind of shooting them at these barrels as much as possible. You can also pre-shoot the barrels as you see that snack time show up, and you can actually blow up some of the barrels. The only time you're actually in danger as a DPS on this fight is if you have multiple stacks of that B bleed on you. And what you also really want to know about this B bleed is if the Shredding Sting cast actually ever gets stopped by any CC, it could be Incapacitating Roar, it could be Chaos Nova, it could be Fear, it could be, DK Stun, like Asphyxiate or anything like that, then it won't recast the Sting, which can reduce the amount of bleeds that go out onto your party. But you have to cast it whenever the mob starts casting its ability. It's similar to what you see in like Dragonflight Season 2, where the mobs wouldn't recast whenever they're CC'd. It's very similar to abilities that are like that. It's the only mob in the season that I actually know is kind of like that. But, whenever we're looking at the world first Cinderbrew Meadery, this team is going to be aware of these kind of things, and they're going to be looking to deal with them quite easily. And the last piece of tech that we have to kind of talk about here are the Yes Men promotions. So whenever the Yes Men are initially pulled, they are non-lieutenant mobs, meaning they can be affected by any CC. The CC that matters the most here is going to be Mind Control. So what you saw on screen right here is it looked like it was this Yes Man, but one of these Yes Men get mind controlled, and it's marked with Skull on screen right here. This other Yes Man is going to be dying off. And this works similar to bolstering. Look, this yes man right here, he is friendly. He is AJ's minion. And this works similar to bolstering, where now these mobs on screen right here, they have received their promotion. These are now lieutenant mobs. They can no longer be CC'd. They now have a little bit more HP, and they have to die one at a time. Where this yes man, he's still in the mind control. He has not promoted. He was not affected by that promotion from those mobs at all. And we are going to leave him in this mind control until the all of the mobs here, the agree gentlemen, all of these other yes men, and just end up dying off. And then we are going to release this yes man, allowing us to skip basically 90% of this mob's HP in the process of just leaving him in a mind control and having to re-MC him 3 times. Then we're on to Goldie Baronbottom, and Goldie Baronbottom is kind of done how I talked about a few months ago whenever we were talking about the things that you need to know about all the dungeons. What teams have been starting to do is they are right on pull, jamming a double stack of the barrel with the boss frontal. And you can see that on screen right here. You know, Yargi's has a 2 stack of that debuff. The debuff is the only thing that really matters, and AJ immediately presses the Mass Dispel to get that dot off of, I think it was both Yargi and Hearthjax there. I didn't actually see who the second person was. Then Kira blows up the next explosive barrel, giving the entire party a dot. But the players who have these circles on them, they aren't doing anything. We are going to allow this to only be dealt with by the tank. And the tank is just going to constantly use the frontal against all of those. Then the Let It Hail cast happens. Everybody's going to plant up kind of ideally near the stage, allowing AJ to make sure that he always spreads his radiance, spreading his atonements to all players. And that's a huge deal. And then we're going to rinse and repeat over and over and over again. Realistically, you can have one of those exploding barrels happen during the Let It Hail and have that go off. It kind of depends on how much HPS your healer wants to put out at the very beginning of that versus at the very end. It kind of just depends on how your healer is feeling about the entire situation. But it is fairly easy. And that is how the World First 17 Cinderbrew Meadery was timed. This is an excellent run, and I'm really excited to show you guys off the 19 Dark Flame Cleft that was timed by the same team tomorrow, and I'm super excited because they've been pushing super hard. And check out their Twitch streams down in the description below. If you've been enjoying this content, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.